You think intelligence is about fast answers, but something else decides real power. There is one mental habit that silently rewires how you read people. If you ignore it, your mind keeps serving others more than you. Most people move through conversations like a reflex. Their thoughts fire, their emotions rise, their mouth responds, and the moment passes. They feel authentic, but they are actually running mental scripts installed over many years. These scripts come from family, culture, media, and from manipulators who tested your reactions. The habit that lifts you above ordinary thinking is very simple. It is the discipline of watching your own mind in real time. Not after the argument ends, not before you sleep, but during every interaction. This habit creates a hidden second layer inside you, like a silent observer. One layer reacts, but the other layer watches the reaction with cold clarity. This second layer does not rush, it does not defend, it only analyzes. Machiavelli once said, if you control perception, you rarely need force. Most people hear this and think about controlling others, but they ignore something deeper. Whoever controls your perception of yourself already owns your behavior without visible pressure. The observing habit starts by questioning your first emotional impulse. Someone raises their voice, your nervous system prepares for attack or defense. Instead of answering instantly, you watch the surge inside like a scientist. You notice where the tension rises first, chest or throat or stomach. You notice which thought jumps up, maybe guilt, maybe anger, maybe a need to explain. You do not fight the thought, you tag it silently as initial program. This small tagging action is the real mental habit. You stop saying this is me and start saying this is my conditioning. The moment you name it as conditioning, it loses a part of its authority. Manipulators hate this habit because it breaks their favorite tool, automatic compliance. They send a small insult, a guilt trigger, or an emotional threat disguised as concern. They want your mind to rush into defending, justifying, or begging for clarity. When you practice inner observation, their trigger lands but does not fully penetrate. You still feel something, but you also see yourself feeling from a distance. This distance is where strategic intelligence begins to grow silently. Albert Bandura once said, if you watch behavior closely, you understand control. He was talking about how people learn through observing others, especially powerful figures. The same rule applies inward. You gain power by observing your own repeated patterns. You start to see that certain people always drain you in similar ways. Sometimes through constant complaints, sometimes through fake confusion, sometimes through subtle comparisons and doubts. Each time, your unobserved mind volunteers energy, time, and emotional regulation without any negotiation. With the observing habit, you begin to track these exchanges like transactions. You ask yourself a quiet question during the moment: what exactly am I paying here? Maybe you are paying with attention, with peace, or with the feeling of being competent. This awareness does not mean you suddenly become cold or uncaring. It means you no longer give psychological credit to every emotional invoice they send. You notice the pattern that some people only feel stable when you feel uncertain. Ordinary thinking treats every emotional signal as a command. Strategic intelligence treats every emotional signal as a data point for analysis. The habit is shifting from obedience to observation before any visible reaction appears. You can test this today in a very simple way. The next time someone complains, criticizes, or suddenly becomes distant, do not rush to fix it. Instead, watch what your mind tries to do first: rescue, confess, or prove your worth. Once you see that first impulse, delay it by a few breaths. During those breaths, you quietly list possible motives behind their behavior. Are they seeking genuine resolution, or are they pulling you into emotional work for them? This is where dark psychology becomes educational instead of destructive. You are not copying manipulators, you are understanding their field of operation. Their advantage always lives inside your unexamined reactions, never only in their clever words. The more you observe, the more patterns you notice repeating across different people. You see the same guilt hooks, the same silent treatments, the same selective attention. You realize they are not unique storms, They are using common psychological tactics on autopilot. Slowly, your mind stops personalizing every emotional hit as proof of your failure. Instead, you recognize structures. You think this is an insecurity script, not divine judgment. Once thinking becomes structural, emotional draining people lose their sacred power over your worth. However, the habit has a dangerous side that most teachers never mention. If you sharpen this observing layer without building any moral compass, something shifts inside. You start seeing people as predictable systems you can push in specific directions. You notice who reacts to silence, who reacts to praise, who collapses under subtle comparison. You realize that with a small change in tone, you can pull their strings. This is the exact point where strategic intelligence can slide into quiet manipulation. The real question is simple yet uncomfortable. When your inner observer becomes stronger than your automatic self, what will you do with that advantage? Will you use it to protect your peace, or to redesign how others move around you? You think your decisions are neutral, but hidden forces shape them before you speak. There is a silent war between your first impulse and your real intention. If you cannot see this war, someone else will guide your next move. The deeper layer of this mental habit begins when you study the gap between trigger and response. Most people experience this gap as a blur, a fast emotional jump they call personality. In reality, that blur is the exact space manipulators target with precision. They know your patterns better than you think. Some observe your speech rhythm, some watch your breathing changes, some track your micro-pauses. Your emotional gaps reveal more than your words, especially when you are unsure. Machiavelli once said, if you read reactions, you read intentions. He understood that most people reveal their inner weakness through their first emotional twitch. A manipulator watches that twitch like a hunter watching a shift in grass. The observing habit protects you because it slows down this reveal. When your inner observer wakes up, your reactions stop leaking raw vulnerability. You create a small psychological fog around your true state. This fog is not deception, it is strategic clarity. You choose what to reveal instead of reacting on command. Your mind becomes less readable and more stable under pressure. Emotional draining people hate unreadable minds. Their tactics depend on predictable emotional openings. If they cannot find an opening, they escalate or retreat. Notice this pattern carefully. When you stop feeding their emotional vacuum, they become irritated or confused. They push harder, become colder, or suddenly act overly sweet. Each shift is a reaction to losing control. Your observing habit is rewiring the dynamic without saying a single word. Your silence now becomes analysis instead of submission. Bandura once said, if you observe responses, you understand reinforcement. He meant that people repeat actions that reward them and drop actions that fail. Manipulators use the same principle. They test what gets the reaction they want. When you stop reacting automatically, their reinforcement loop breaks. Their guilt comments stop working, their emotional distance loses impact, their pressure becomes visible. You see the hidden strings they used, and the strings lose strength. Strategic intelligence grows when you notice these strings in real time. You begin connecting subtle clues, tone changes, energy shifts, selective empathy. Your mind starts mapping the other person's internal insecurity architecture. You learn to ask quiet questions during the interaction. Why did they choose this moment to criticize me? Why does their mood lift only when mine drops? The observing habit transforms questions into real-time diagnostics. Your mind scans motive, pattern, and intention with calm precision. You are no longer controlled by emotional speed, you control the speed. But here is the psychological twist people rarely recognize. Once you develop this clarity, you start sensing invisible emotional debts. You see who drains you, who depends on your confusion, who rises when you shrink. Most people feel this intuitively, but cannot explain it. They say things like something feels off or I feel tired around them. The observing habit turns these vague feelings into exact psychological indicators. You start identifying three draining patterns. The dependency pattern, where someone always needs emotional resources from you. The contradiction pattern, where someone praises you and undermines you in the same breath. The comparison pattern, where someone uses subtle contrasts to reduce your confidence. Once your mind names these patterns, they lose their supernatural power. You stop treating draining behavior as personal failure and start seeing it as predictable strategy. The draining person loses access to your internal buttons. But the habit does something even more powerful. It shows you the part of yourself that cooperated with manipulation unknowingly. You see how your need for harmony, acceptance, or clarity made you easy to redirect. This realization is uncomfortable but necessary. You cannot become strategically intelligent without seeing your own vulnerability map. Your observing habit becomes a mirror that shows both strength and weakness. However, the second stage of this habit creates a new psychological fork. Once you see how easily people can be influenced through emotional timing, the question becomes sharper than before. Now that you can predict reactions, calm storms, or trigger shifts, what will you do when someone tries to pull you into another emotional trap? Will you use your awareness to protect your energy? Or will you use it to shape the dynamic in ways they never see coming? You think you are responding with logic, but emotions decide first and logic follows. Your mind believes it is choosing freely, yet someone else can set the stage for your choices. If you cannot see who sets the stage, you become part of their strategy. The third layer of this mental habit begins with one realization. Every reaction you have is built on silent assumptions you never questioned. These assumptions act like invisible filters controlling what you notice and what you ignore. Manipulators study these filters carefully. They watch what you respond to fastest: praise, criticism, silence, or uncertainty. Your fastest response reveals your deepest mental shortcut. Machiavelli once said, if you know a person's weakness, you can predict their future. He understood that predictable people rarely make independent decisions. Their mental shortcuts betray them before their words do. The observing habit breaks these shortcuts. You begin noticing the first thought that appears after any emotional hit. Maybe it is, I need to fix this, or did I disappoint someone, or I must explain myself. That first thought is the key to your psychological programming. It shows how you were shaped and where others still hold influence over you. If you react to guilt instantly, you are conditioned for compliance. If you react to praise instantly, you are conditioned for validation. If you react to silence instantly, you are conditioned for insecurity. If you react to confusion instantly, you are conditioned for emotional labor. Bandura once said, if you understand why you react, you rewrite your behavior. Self-observation reveals the hidden reward system you have been following unconsciously. You start to see which reactions serve you and which reactions serve others only. This is where strategic intelligence evolves quietly. You stop accepting every emotional demand as a moral responsibility. You understand that some people use emotion as currency to purchase your attention. Emotional draining people spend this currency aggressively. They guilt you when they need reassurance. They complain when they need control. They withdraw when they need you to chase them. The observing habit reveals each tactic as a behavioral pattern instead of emotional truth. Your mind starts asking precise questions during the moment. What response am I being conditioned to deliver here? This question alone protects your energy. It breaks the cycle of automatic giving and emotional overextending. It exposes who depends on your reaction more than your presence. Strategic intelligence also means noticing timing. Draining people rarely apply pressure when you are strong. They wait for moments when you are tired, unsure, or distracted. Their timing is not accidental. It is learned through watching you. They memorize when your guard drops and strike during those windows. Your observing habit widens that window back in your favor. You begin tracking when you are most vulnerable to emotional influence. Maybe late at night, maybe during stress, maybe when you feel isolated. You map your own weak hours the same way manipulators do. Once you know your weak hours, their advantage disappears. You stop engaging in heavy conversations during those moments. You stop negotiating under pressure or explaining yourself when exhausted. A new intelligence forms inside you. You see that not all emotional pressure deserves a response right now. Some situations become clear only when you wait until you are steady again. The observing habit introduces another twist. You begin noticing that your mind reacts differently to different people. Some people activate calm, others activate tension or confusion. This difference is not random. It exposes who respects your boundaries and who benefits when you forget them. Your inner observer becomes skilled at detecting micro-imbalances in power. You realize power is not about dominance, it is about predictability. Whoever can predict your response holds psychological advantage over you. Whoever you cannot predict holds psychological advantage over your peace. As you sharpen this habit, you start seeing a hidden hierarchy in every relationship. Not based on status or title, but based on emotional influence and control. You see who expects your compliance, who assumes your silence, who counts on your guilt. This awareness creates a shift that others can feel. Your reactions become slower, cleaner, and less controlled by their emotional triggers. Your silence stops being submission and becomes strategy. Yet there is a darker realization hiding beneath all of this. Once you understand emotional timing, internal programming, and reaction mapping, you can predict not only their moves, but also the moves they expect from you. And here the real question emerges, sharp and unsettling. Now that you can see every emotional hook being thrown at you, will you simply avoid them, or will you learn how to pull the hooks out of others without them noticing? You think you are choosing your reactions, but most choices are preloaded scripts. Your mind believes it is responding freely, yet invisible psychological cues guide every move. If you cannot detect these cues, someone else will program your next reaction. The fourth layer of this mental habit begins with a deeper truth. Every interaction contains a hidden negotiation of power, even when it feels casual. This negotiation is not verbal. It happens through micro-signals your mind rarely registers. Manipulators operate inside these micro-signals. They track your hesitation, your breath shifts, your eye response speed, your emotional micro-drops. These tiny signals reveal when you are open to influence and when you are mentally defended. Machiavelli once said, if you sense vulnerability first, you gain strategic advantage. He understood that subtle perception matters more than loud actions. Those who read the smallest shift can direct the whole conversation. Your observing habit gives you this same power, but through clarity rather than manipulation. You start noticing your own micro-signals before others see them. You notice the moment your voice tries to shrink or your posture prepares to explain. These micro-signals show where your autonomy leaks. A small nod at the wrong time can signal agreement you never intended. A small pause can signal guilt even when you are innocent. Emotional draining people rely on these leaks. They send calculated discomfort, a sigh, a half sentence, a disappointed tone. Your old self would rush to fix the discomfort without analyzing the intention behind it. The observing habit slows the urge to fix. It teaches you to feel the discomfort fully without rushing into emotional labor. You watch the pressure rise, but you no longer surrender to it. Bandura once said, if you watch behavior without reacting, you break the reinforcement loop. When you stop rewarding emotional pressure with instant compliance, the person using pressure loses their psychological leverage. Your strategic intelligence expands here. You begin to recognize three categories of influence tactics. The pressure tactic that demands instant response. The confusion tactic that forces emotional explanation. And the approval tactic that gives selective validation. Each tactic is designed to shift your emotional balance. Pressure makes you reactive, confusion makes you insecure, approval makes you compliant. Without observation, you become a participant in their emotional economy. But with observation, you become the analyst. You watch their tactic instead of playing your expected role. You turn the entire exchange into live psychological data. This is where the mental habit reshapes your identity. You stop defining yourself through reactions and start defining yourself through awareness. Your psychological center becomes stronger, quieter, and harder to manipulate. Others begin to feel the shift before you speak. They sense that you are no longer guided by unconscious guilt or fear. They sense that your silence is no longer vulnerability, but calculation. Some people respond with respect. Some respond with confusion. Some respond with frustration because their influence over you is fading. This reveals another truth. Your emotional clarity exposes who valued you and who valued your compliance. You finally see who wanted connection and who wanted control. And here the habit deepens further. Your mind starts separating emotion from message. You can feel pressure without accepting its command. You can feel guilt without believing its narrative. This separation is the rare skill that elevates you beyond ordinary thinking. Most people drown inside their emotional response. You learn to stand on the edge and observe the current without being pulled in. Yet there is a hidden twist that emerges as this power grows. You begin noticing not only the tactics people use, but the ones they expect you to use. Your clarity shows you the map of influence from both sides. And the next psychological question rises like a warning. When you can sense pressure forming before it reaches you, will you stay neutral, or will you learn to redirect that pressure and reshape the entire interaction? You think you are holding your boundaries, but most boundaries collapse before a word is spoken. Your mind believes it resists influence, yet it absorbs emotional signals long before you notice them. If you cannot see the signal entering, you cannot control the reaction leaving. The fifth layer of this mental habit focuses on unseen emotional transfers. People do not drain you through what they say, they drain you through what they make you feel. Their tone, timing, pauses, and selective warmth alter your internal balance silently. Manipulators master this transfer. They project subtle stress to make you carry it. They project subtle guilt to make you fix it. They project subtle doubt to make you weaken yourself. Your observing habit reveals these transfers in real time. You begin noticing emotional weight entering your body during conversations. A mild tension in the jaw, a tightness in the chest, a sudden need to justify. These sensations are not your emotions, they are emotional imports. Someone else is depositing their inner instability into your calm space. Most people accept these deposits as responsibility, not as intrusion. Machiavelli once said, if you shift emotion cleverly, you shift control without conflict. This is the principle emotional draining people use unconsciously. They transfer their chaos into you so they can feel lighter at your expense. Bandura once said, if behavior is rewarded, it continues. When you carry their emotional weight, you reward their draining pattern. Your silence becomes reinforcement even when you feel exhausted. Strategic intelligence demands a new inner question. Is this emotion mine, or is it an incoming influence attempt? This question breaks the automatic acceptance of imported chaos. The observing habit helps you return emotions to the correct owner silently. You stop resolving fear that isn't yours. You stop fixing guilt that wasn't earned. You stop explaining yourself when the confusion wasn't created by you. This creates a powerful psychological shift. Your presence becomes calm and immovable. Their tactics lose traction because there is nothing for them to grip onto. And others feel this shift instantly. They see that their frustration no longer pulls you in. They see that their disappointment no longer forces you to adjust. Your emotional state becomes self-generated, not externally controlled. Your stability becomes your shield, your pause becomes your strategy, and your silence becomes your psychological leverage. But here comes the twist that few understand. When you stop absorbing emotional weight, you start noticing how much influence people try to place on you every day. A realization forms quietly inside you. The world is full of people who demand emotional labor without consent. The question is not whether influence exists, but who benefits from it. And as this habit strengthens into instinct, a new choice appears. Now that you can block emotional imports, Will you only defend your peace, or will you learn to redirect emotional energy back to where it belongs? You think you have finally mastered your reactions, but there is one more layer. Your mind believes awareness is enough, yet awareness without intention becomes aimless power. If you cannot choose your purpose, your intelligence becomes a tool with no direction. The final layer of this mental habit reveals the deepest truth. Observation transforms you, but intention decides who you become after transformation. Many people gain clarity but lose compassion. Many gain boundaries but lose balance. Many gain strategic intelligence but lose purpose. Manipulators use clarity without conscience. They observe to exploit. They analyze to dominate. They influence to drain. You are learning the same mechanics, but through inner awareness rather than deceit. This gives you a rare advantage. Machiavelli once said, if power is not guided, it corrupts its owner before others. This is the danger hidden inside advanced psychological awareness. When you understand influence deeply, you can bend interactions, shape outcomes, and steer emotions without effort. Bandura once said, if behavior is consciously chosen, it becomes identity. The way you use your new intelligence will decide who you become. Will you become someone who manipulates quietly, or someone who protects their mind without stealing from others? The observing habit now becomes something bigger. It evolves from defense into design. You begin designing your emotional landscape deliberately. You choose when to engage and when to remain silent. You choose which battles deserve energy and which ones deserve distance. You choose how much access people get to your internal world. Strategic intelligence is no longer a reaction. It becomes an architecture you maintain daily. Your mind becomes a clean room where no unfiltered influence enters. This is where draining people lose all their power. Their guilt cannot land. Their frustration cannot shape you. Their silence cannot control you. Their pressure cannot redirect you. Your reactions become intentional. Your emotions become chosen. Your clarity becomes the new standard. Others begin to experience you differently. They sense you cannot be rushed. You cannot be provoked. You cannot be emotionally purchased. Your presence becomes calm but intimidating, quiet but analytical, kind but unshakable. This final transformation leads to one truth. Strategic intelligence is not about controlling others. It is about not allowing others to control the space inside you. You have learned to observe deeply, to decode hidden motives, to block emotional imports, to slow reactive scripts, and to analyze influence without surrendering to it. But here lies the final psychological twist. Now that you have built a mind that cannot be controlled, what will you do with the power to remain untouched in a world full of silent manipulators? Will you use this intelligence to build stronger boundaries? Or will you use it to reshape the emotional landscape around you in ways no one sees coming?